So here we are playing Soldier Kings. This is still the first turn the Russians have gone. And for their actions, the main thing they did was play event cards. They had... these can be played outside of actions, but they had Agent Provocateur, which allowed them to draw 3 new cards. And then they played Burnt Bridge, which let them put a little marker in here. Now this will go away at the end of the turn. It creates some penalties if anyone tries to move in there. Any armies entering the area must stop and move no further. No biggie there. All land attacks, though, are at 50% normal value. That's at the end of the turn, though. They may not have wanted to play that yet. Yeah, they're going to hold that one. Yeah, they'll play it. What the hell. Okay. And they gathered their forces here, as well as getting all their new leaders. So they have a pretty potent defense there. They just don't have a way of doing anything. And that's fine. Now we go on with the English, and I'm going to see what they do. On the English turn, they played a couple of cards. Debase Currency, which they played on the French. Now that means the French are going to get 25% more income this winter and lose 25% in every succeeding winter. And they also played Pirates to give them a pirate fleet, which works like another fleet, except it can't combine with the English fleets. They created in the Caribbean and sailed over to the South Atlantic. Essentially, 1, 2, 3. They're going to blockade Senegal. They don't really need to, but that's okay. They also proceeded to blockade all the territories where French have fleets in the New World. Should they do something with this fleet? They're a little worried about whether or not anybody else could do anything to them. But there really isn't anyone who can other than the Russians. So I'm going to put out into the North Sea and protect that. I also moved some land units. Moved Cumberland down. Now he has 2 movement because he's with a leader. 1, 2. Into the Austrian Netherlands. This is an act of aggression against Austria. Whether or not I want to actually attack them in a siege is hard to tell. But I'm positioning myself to deal with the French. And here I'm going to stay with the knowledge that I can retreat before combat, but here I'm attacking. And I'm going to do a 1-round attack, which costs me $1. And now the French have the option to withdraw. Now where can they retreat to? Good question. They probably want to, because they're in trouble in that combat. They can't go into the Dutch space, though. But they could go up to Mysore, because that's neutral. And they're going to do that. And now, for the English siege phase, they get free sieges. Did they want to take them? They're going to only take a free siege here against the Austrians. That's 4 dice against 2 dice. And the Austrians get a single hit. This thing takes 3 to hurt, though. So, actually, there was no chance of them getting hurt in this siege. One of the reasons they did it. They didn't get any hits, though, so they don't get any points against it. Here, do they want to pay for this? How much does a siege cost? 2 rounds cost 1 resource. Unlimited cost 2. I'm going to pay 2 for unlimited rounds of activity there. I have a total of 4 dice against their 2. I basically want to take this. I fail. 1 hit to 1 hit. The English have to withdraw, and I've got a 1 on them. So now it's 2 to 1. And I paid for it. This is kind of risky. We both got a hit. That means I would have won, but I didn't because I couldn't stick around. So the French get to keep the territory. The strength comes back. What would have been great is if I could have captured the area, then I would have captured those French fleets because they're under blockade. All right, well, that's the English turn. And now we'll go on to the Dutch. Well, the Dutch have very little on the board. And they don't want to make any enemies at this point. They feel like everybody's leaving them alone. They basically passed. Turkey similarly only moved their units up here on the Russian border, and otherwise they're holding steady. But then we get to Spain, and Spain played a couple of cards. They played illegal recruitment, where they got some additional manpower, and France lost some. And then they played La Grande Society, which is actually removed from the game. The French lose 1 to 3 resources for each French unit currently in the Americas. They lost, I think, 7 points worth of units, and that card's out of play though. They lost 7 points of money because of 3 units being on the board in the Americas. But now Spain gets to take its great blow against France, and we're going to move into Louisiana. Going to move up to Mexico, and then the big one is into here. We get sieges for free. We're not in any great hurry here, so we're going to roll these. This one will be 2 to 1. I could get driven out. I do not. The area stays under siege. Here I've got 5, 6. To 3. And again, I'm only taking 1 roll. I get a single hit, which means that that's a little weaker at this point. And that's the end of the Spanish turn. And you can see how simple the system is, and there's not a lot of stacks or anything to do anything with, which makes this a fairly easy light game for definitely in the wimp game category, where you could probably get people who aren't wargamers into it pretty easily. However, we have already seen what the historical simulation does. Still, it's fun to put these types of things together. We're going to move to Austria, and Austria's got to do some thinking on what they're going to do about the Prussians right now. So now we're on the Austrian turn, and the Austrians played a couple of minor country alliance cards. The first one they played was on Bavaria. They actually have a +1 on Bavaria, and they spent some money, and Prussia did not, and no one else was interested. They had an additional +1 for more units next to Bavaria, and they got Bavaria, so they've got a couple extra units there, which they're going to use in their campaign, I believe. They also tried Poland, whom they have a +1 on, but the problem with Poland was there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 units from neighbors of Austria's who weren't terribly pleased with the idea, and only 1 Austrian unit next to it. So there's -9 to the die roll there, -8 after the +1. As soon as everyone committed their troops, Austria realized they're not going to be able to bribe their way into this. So they let that pass. And finally they played an Indian revolt, which gave them this huge stack of Indian units. They control them, and they're going to kind of use them as follows. They're going to march them into the French territory, and then they're going to try to force Britain. Their goal is to take Carnatic, because that whole army can survive in Carnatic. if they own it. That whole army cannot survive in any of the Indian-owned areas, so they have to push it forward by the winter. But here's the thing. They're going to use it as a diplomatic lever to try to get things from Britain, among them a formal alliance, but also perhaps other things. And if Britain doesn't pay up, as it were, and Austria could use the money, then they might lose their Indian territories. Okay, so let's see what they're going to do here, though. This is able to move 2. I'll move it in. That gets me 2 liters. And I also move the Bavarians up. And I can move the Austrian extra army up. And we're going to pay for an attack against Schwerin, but we don't want to pay too much because he's probably going to retreat. So I'm going to pay 1 resource for attacking Schwerin. And miners don't have to pay. So I'm doing an invasion with them. The French would like to get out of there, so they do. And the Indians are in territory they control. Moving over to here, Schwerin says, I was outnumbered before. I'm going to pull out as well and join Frederick up here in Saxony. It's very hard to force somebody into a battle. In fact, it's damn near impossible. So that's the Austrian turn, and now we come to the French turn, and France is on the ropes here. They may want to seek their ally in Prussia again at this point. We'll see. On the French turn, they activated Savoy, and both they and Spain spent $3 each. These are secret payments. I'm not being very secretive with them. I'm not writing them down or hiding them terribly well, but they should be handled secretly. 3 is kind of the break-even point there. Savoy's not that important. It gave them an extra unit which they drove against the Spaniards. But they do get to set sail with the Navy. This actually happened first. 1, 2. You can go a third from the eastern Atlantic, and I'll take it to the central Atlantic, where it's kind of safe, actually. I'm also going to try to pull out of here, and that gets me hit by the British. So I've got the 2 red dice are actually the French. The 3 white are the British. Okay, the British just sunk this French fleet that they were besieging. That's okay, because France was worried about it being captured instead of sunk. Where else are they? These fleets they're okay with. They're going to march down into New England and try to grab that. Yeah. And I'm trying to see where else they might want to move. Okay. And I'll take care of those battles and come back, because me rolling dice doesn't really seem very exciting. But they're going to only spend 1 for this battle and just 1 for this battle. That siege can't continue as long as they've got troops there. So, although the points remain there. Alright, I guess that's it for France. I'll roll the dice and I'll come back at the end of the turn. Well, that's the end of the French turn, and that's the end of the spring turn as a whole. Let's see what happened. So the French attacked the Spaniards here. They played booty taking, which actually just halves the strength of a unit. Ended up taking 1 strength point away. But we can see the Spain's precarious position. The unit that one of their units got hit in combat. Now they got to retreat after a hit. There's no fleet out here to carry them. They came over the mountains. They're dead. Bang. Bad stuff there. Down here, the French lost. The British withdrew, of course. The French lost 1 strength point in their siege attack, but they did get a hit, so the siege is somewhat effective. They'll have to recuperate that unit if they want to get it back. So that's the end of one campaign turn, and we start the whole process over. Except, of course, everybody's down on cards now. A lot of the big cards probably gets played early in the year. We're seeing, major military operations between Spain and France, where they're fighting one another. And we're seeing the English are definitely hostile to the French, which they kind of have to be. The Austro-Prussian War has expanded with Bavaria joining it. And Russia and Turkey are in a standoff right here, and this actually goes away. The Dutch have stayed out of things. They've been quiet. And that's about it. Except, of course, this big Indian revolt that Austria is going to use to try to get some kind of help. And, of course, if this were like the real 7 Years' War, one country, England or France, coming to the aid of one of the Austro-Prussian antagonists, forces the other to go the other way. I'm not sure that's the case in this game. I think that they may give monetary aid, but much more than that's pretty questionable. The main focus is this French-British war. So there's kind of these two big wars that are going to go on. And that, in some ways that's historical, but I think the possibility of French or English intervention is low. There's not this feeling that, if Prussia wins, that's a big help for Britain. It's not. Okay, so up this one goes.